Yahoo, Amazon, eBay, CNN, Dell. February 7th, 2000. Yahoo, the most visited website on the internet, goes completely dark for 3 hours. Nobody knows why. Engineers in California stare at screens full of data that makes no sense. The servers are being hit by billions of requests per second, as if an army of computers from all over the world is attacking at once. A day later, Amazon goes down, then eBay, then CNN, then Dell. 6 of the biggest sites on the internet, one after another, in the span of a single week. The FBI sets up a crisis unit. The White House gets hourly briefings. President Clinton personally calls a cybersecurity summit. Journalists throw around the word cyber terrorism, speculating about a state-sponsored attack. Maybe Russia, maybe China. The real culprit is sitting in his bedroom in Montreal, typing away, telling friends in a chat room that he just took down half the internet. He is 15 years old. This is the story of Mafia Boy. Michael Kelsey grew up in West Island, a suburb of Montreal, in an ordinary Canadian family. Nothing about his childhood suggested he'd become one of the most wanted hackers in the world. He got his first computer at 10 years old. He quickly found his way into IRC chat rooms and hacker forums, places where young enthusiasts traded tools, tricks, and status. In that community, he went by Mafia Boy, a name he picked because it sounded tough and dangerous. In reality, he was a kid who did his homework after school and logged into underground channels at night, where hackers bragged about their exploits. Back then, there were no sophisticated ready-made attack kits like today. You just needed access to the right scripts and the know-how to use them. And that's exactly what Michael had. He wasn't a genius coder writing malware from scratch. He was someone who could find other people's tools, understand them, and deploy them more effectively than most professional adults could. His weapon of choice was a technique called a DDoS attack, distributed denial of service. Picture a store with a single entrance. If you put 10,000 people in front of it, all shoving to get in at once, real customers can't get through. That's exactly what a DDoS attack does to a server. It floods it with so many requests that it collapses under its own weight. The difference was that Michael didn't just use his own computer. He broke into university networks across the United States, including systems at Yale and Stanford, and planted tools there that turned hundreds of other people's machines into his own private army, a so-called botnet. He could control these computers remotely and order them all to attack a single target at once. In February 2000, he decided to see just how far he could push it. Monday, February 7th, 2000. Michael logged into his network of hijacked university computers and pointed all of them at a single target: Yahoo.com. In 2000, Yahoo was synonymous with the internet. It was the biggest search engine, the biggest portal, the first page most people saw when they opened a browser. The company's estimated value was in the tens of billions of dollars. At 10:30 a.m., Yahoo collapsed completely. Millions of users around the world saw nothing but an error message where the homepage used to be. It took nearly 3 hours for Yahoo's engineers to bring the attack under control. Michael watched the news live on television. He saw reporters talking about a mysterious outage at the world's largest website, and he knew exactly what had happened because he had done it from a computer in his bedroom. But this was only the beginning. Tuesday, February 8th. The next target was Buy.com. On the very same day, the company was going public on the stock exchange. The site crashed on what was supposed to be the most important day in its history. Later that same day, eBay goes down. Wednesday, February 9th, CNN.com, the main news source for millions of Americans, becomes unreachable at the exact moment the world wants to know what's happening to the internet. That same week, Amazon and Dell are added to the list of victims. In total, 6 of the largest internet companies of the era fully or partially knocked offline in a single week. Estimated damages, including lost sales, stock price drops, and repair costs, later added up to roughly $1.2 billion. That number shocked even Michael himself. He never expected his experimenting to have this kind of impact. According to his later statements, this didn't start as a plan to attack the world's biggest companies. It started as a competition between hackers in a chat room over who could cause the most chaos. America was in shock. This was happening just a year before the dot-com boom hit its peak, at a time when trust in the internet as a safe place to shop and communicate was crucial for the future of the entire economy. If the biggest companies in the world couldn't protect their servers from an unknown attacker, what did that mean for the future of the digital economy? President Bill Clinton convened a meeting with top tech executives and law enforcement officials. The FBI launched one of the largest cybercrime investigations in its history. Journalists around the world speculated that a hostile nation-state or an organized crime syndicate was behind the attacks, which is part of why the name Mafia Boy took on such mythic weight in the press. No one suspected for a second that they were hunting a teenager from a Montreal suburb. This is where the story gets really interesting. Not because of how sophisticated the manhunt was, but because of how simple Michael's downfall actually turned out to be. The FBI and Canada's RCMP worked together on an investigation that involved analyzing server logs across North America, trying to trace the origin of the attacks through dozens of compromised machines. It was slow, painstaking digital forensic work. But the real breakthrough came from a completely different place: the chat rooms. Michael, like many young hackers of that era, couldn't resist bragging. On the IRC channels where the hacker community hung out, he openly admitted that he was behind the attacks on Yahoo and the other sites. He talked about it with friends. He discussed technical details of the attacks that only the real perpetrator could have known. Investigators, who were monitoring these forums as part of the broader investigation, noticed the chatter. The name Mafia Boy kept surfacing alongside details that hadn't been made public yet. Information about exactly how the attacks were carried out that the media hadn't reported. Investigators obtained a court order and began tracking online activity linked to the handle Mafia Boy. Through internet service providers, they were able to trace IP addresses to a specific location: a house in West Island, Montreal, Canada. On April 15, 2000, just 2 months after the attacks, Canadian police raided the Kelsey family home. Michael was 15 at the time. According to later reports, he learned he was under arrest right as he was getting ready for school. The public, which had expected a foreign power or an experienced criminal organization behind one of the biggest cyber attacks in history, was stunned to learn the truth. It was a teenager who spent most of his free time hanging out in chat rooms and playing video games. Because Michael was a minor at the time of the attacks, the Canadian court couldn't release his real name during the trial. The media referred to him only as Mafia Boy throughout. Only after sentencing could his identity become public. In January 2001, he pleaded guilty to most of the charges, a total of 10 counts related to unauthorized access to computer systems. The sentence he received surprised many people with how lenient it was, given the scale of the damage he'd caused. 8 months in a youth detention facility, 1 year of probation, restricted internet access, and a fine of less than $250. The reason was his age. Canada's youth justice system at the time emphasized rehabilitation over punishment. Critics argued that such a light sentence for damages exceeding $1 billion was absurd. Supporters countered that a harsher punishment wouldn't change the fact that this was a 15-year-old kid who didn't fully grasp the consequences of what he was doing. Michael later admitted in interviews that at the time of the attacks, he had no idea how big the impact would be. For him, it was a game, a competition for respect within an online community, not a calculated plan to cause $1 billion in damage. Most stories about young hackers end either in prison or in obscurity. Michael Kelsey chose a third path. After serving his sentence, he decided to put his notoriety to different use. He studied computer science and went to work in cybersecurity, the exact side of the fence he had once attacked. In 2008, he published a book titled Mafia Boy: How I Cracked the Internet and Why It's Still Broken, in which he told his story and warned that many of the security holes he'd exploited as a teenager still existed. He also became a regular speaker at cybersecurity conferences, warning companies not to underestimate threats that can come from even completely inexperienced but highly motivated individuals. His story became one of the most cited cases in the history of cybersecurity, not because it was the most sophisticated attack ever carried out, but because of the opposite. It exposed just how fragile the systems underpinning the entire digital economy really were at the time. If a 15-year-old with tools downloaded off the internet could cause $1 billion in damage, what could a truly organized and motivated group of attackers accomplish? The Mafia Boy case became one of the main reasons companies started investing heavily in DDoS protection after 2000, infrastructure that today protects nearly every major website on the internet. Today, more than 20 years after Michael Kelsey, as a teenager, took down half the internet, DDoS attacks haven't gone away. If anything, they've become one of the most common weapons in cyber warfare, used by everyone from small-time extortionists to state-sponsored hacking groups. The difference is that today, companies actually know what to do when an attack hits. Mafia Boy's story is a reminder of an uncomfortable truth about cybersecurity. The biggest threats don't always come from the most sophisticated attackers. Sometimes all it takes is one curious teenager, a handful of tools found online, and a system nobody bothered to properly secure. If you enjoyed this story, hit like and let me know in the comments which hacker you want me to cover next. And if you're new here, consider subscribing. Every week I bring you another story from the world of hackers that you've probably never heard before.